For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carl Sisson, and I serve as the VP for Advanced Engagement for the college. And that provides me with the privilege of traveling sometimes in very different parts of the country, connecting with alumni and friends of the college. And a couple years ago, President Mullen and I and Dr. Mills were down in Dallas for a conference and an alumni event in the Dallas area. And I was really excited because I saw someone that I had tried to connect with previously was coming to the event, but had never been able to successfully connect with. And Dr. Lynne Orozco came to that event, and she had one of those, I said to someone, a magnetic personality that everyone who attended the event knew who she was by the time we left, or was asking, who was that? And so when I revisited Lynne about a year ago in Dallas, I said, we would love to get you back to campus. And just, you have an opportunity to share some of your story, some of your ministry in the Dallas area, and an opportunity to just share her expertise and her life experience with you. And today's been full. How many of you were in chapel? Maybe I shouldn't ask that. All right. So I know this is a light day. Had a chance to listen to Lynne in chapel. Some of you had an opportunity to hear her in class at the Mosaic Center following this at 7 o'clock tonight, a different type of topic. We would welcome you. Tell your friends, come listen to Lynne tonight as well. And we are excited to have her back on campus. Before I read kind of her official bio, I should just pause and pray and bless our time together. Heavenly Father, we are grateful for the day that you have provided us. In this week of Thanksgiving, Lord, we especially give thanks for those who have been on this campus, Lord, and then have left and gone out to impact the world, Lord. And that's how you have designed this place to be a special place that fosters creativity and compassion, Lord, and lifelong learning. And we thank you that you have brought Lynne back to us. Please speak through her and bless our time together. In your name we pray. Amen. So here's the official. Dr. Lynne Lerner, class of 2002, Orozco, is originally from North Tonawanda. And while she was here at Houghton, she majored in Bible and biology and actually had a minor in chemistry and played on the women's soccer team. And understand she was a stud on the soccer field. Lynne obtained her medical doctorate from SUNY Buffalo School of Medicine in Biomedical Sciences in 2006. And it was in Buffalo that she met and married her husband, Dr. Ludwig Orozco, originally from Guatemala, before accompanying him to the University of Mississippi Medical Center, where he had his neurosurgery residency. While in Mississippi, Lynne finished her family medicine residency and went on to serve as medical director, ER physician, and hospitalist at a critical access hospital in rural Mississippi. The couple then moved to Dallas in 2014. She currently serves at Hope Clinic in Garland, Texas, and Hope Clinic is a charity clinic serving patients whose income is below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, and many of whom are Spanish-speaking. Lynne said today she's actually one of 3 physicians and the only one who speaks Spanish, so you're speaking Spanish pretty much all day. And then she also rounds on geriatric patients, where she's the medical director of a nursing home there as well. The Orozcos have 3 beautiful children: Adeline, age 12, Eliza, age 7, I said that wrong, and Alden, age, almost 6 months. They may be joining us here momentarily. And this is an interesting fact. I'd be curious, and you guys should ask questions about this. The Orozco family has together developed an app called Devotional Connection, where you can listen to adult or children's devotionals or Bible readings in English or Spanish through a phone call, thus allowing for family devotional time even while commuting or traveling. The Orozcos believe in you, the students, and the future of Houghton College. As faithful annual donors, they are members of our 1883 Society and recently created the Lynne and Ludwig Orozco Scholarship. And this is an endowed scholarship that will support students who are pursuing a career in medicine and who also have a strong interest in biblical studies. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lynne Orozco, who will share with you some of her vocational journey.
Hello, thank you guys for coming. I remember these talks. And I don't want to be repetitive of chapel, but some of that will obviously incorporate in today. I think that I wanted to focus a little more tonight just on what every college student, or at least I certainly felt and sort of dwelled a lot on, which is starting to understand and know God's will, and how sometimes nebulous that can be. Because I feel like that at least was where I was at when I was here and in your shoes. One of my best friends also came today. Her name was Erin, and sat down in front. If you saw some of my friends down there that are my age. And she was a new Christian when she came to Hope, brand new Christian. And she used to really just agonize about God's will, about classes, about majors, about boyfriends, about everything. And I was born and raised in the church, was a pastor's kid, and would try and, I guess, help her along there. But it has really been something that I think has been a growing part of my life, is also understanding and knowing what God's will is. So I used to sort of jokingly tell her back then, Erin, God doesn't care that chicken and beef as long as you're living righteously. And that helped, I think, and it was a good kind of easy lesson for me. But I think that question of living righteously sometimes isn't always that clear. I shared today how I really saw myself being a medical missionary overseas in presumably West Africa was my thoughts. And I'm not in West Africa, obviously. I'm in Dallas, Texas. So that has morphed and changed throughout my life. But I think that the part of living righteously and being able to move on day by day, not paralyzed by fear and falling out of God's will, is that what I talked about today? Is making sure you are loving God with your heart, soul, and mind, and loving others. And if you're doing that, then you are in God's will. And I think that if that's your focus, then the rest falls into place. So we touched a little, I never saw myself working in a little critical access hospital in Mississippi, which was my first job out of residency. And that was a really shaping, great experience for me. In reality, I also worked with some refugees there because they had a big chicken plant right next door. But it was in what's called Scott County, which is the poorest county in Mississippi, which is the poorest state in America. So it was a very neat experience to be doing things that a lot of more modern doctors don't do anymore. Casting and splinting, putting in central lines, doing intubations, rounding on patients after I admitted them myself, and it was a shaping experience. But I will say that my clinical work in West Africa and South Sudan helped prepare me for that time in Mississippi, because you had to do all that stuff there too. So a lot of doctors wouldn't have been able to take that role as a family doctor, because they had never had ER experience, or had never intubated, or had never, things that I had to do while I was working in West Africa and South Sudan. So it is neat how God shaped that, right? I didn't think I would be doing that critical access job or in this rural area of Mississippi, but He was preparing me for it through med school, and I didn't know that. And now in Dallas, again, did not see myself there. Probably really, if I'm honest, don't. If I'm really honest, probably don't love Dallas, to be really honest. It's not, it's a very affluent city. It's a boom if you want to go and do construction or do anything related to big business, then that is your place. But that wasn't me, per se. But I think God has orchestrated things to be able to be involved in the clinic I'm at, which is Hope Clinic, which is not just a charity clinic, but an entirely faith-based clinic. So I have the freedom to talk to my patients about prayer and taking walks and praying, and how that helps their stress and the things they're dealing with, even their blood pressure. And I really enjoy having the freedom to do that. and them taking it seriously, not just sort of laughing me off. So it has been neat to see how what I thought was maybe, when I guilted myself or thought maybe I'm falling out of God's will by doing these things, it's starting to realize, well, no, I think it was His will all the while, because I still was seeking Him and loving Him and trying to love others through it. So I guess I encourage you guys with that. Each of these different roles I play, they're different. I do very little, I do no ER work now, and the rounding I do is in a nursing home, which is different than actively admitted hospital patients. But I can see how each thing has helped prepare me for the next in my profession. And then, I think I speak a little towards the women in the room, that it's extra having kids and children that are dependent on you, and that has to be a big priority of your life for a substantial amount of time. And that balance is very difficult, and I'm not sure that I can say I'm the expert on that. But that too has to be a focus and drive of yours from the Lord. I had one physician, female friend of mine, tell me that you're told you can do everything and that you can be a doctor and be a mom and do both full time. And she said it feels like a Chinese all-you-can-eat restaurant that you go in and it's a good idea, but you come out and it was a bad idea. And that sounds true, but I think at the same time, if you're able to take both roles seriously and know that your role for your children is to love and help them grow up in the way of the Lord, but your role for your patients is to love and care, then you can do both without feeling just too full. And priorities have to fall into place. And I'm not going to tell you that's not hard. It's hard. But I think it happens and it's fulfilling in both realms of your life. So those are my main thoughts for tonight. I know it's sort of short, but I was hoping that there might be questions and things that you guys wanted to bring up. Carl did want me to touch a little.
Yeah, I was just curious. So you're in a faith-based clinic now, as compared to your experience in Mississippi. Contrast that. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis when you can openly share your faith versus when you can't? Potentially.
Yes. So I think the one nice thing about being a doctor is that kind of are bossish, even though you're just a boss, even if you have bosses. So, I think my faith was still able to be involved in Mississippi, and because Mississippi is still a pretty Bible Belt kind of state. I think it's a little harder in New York and where I trained. But now I'm able to be just blatant and say, and here's our chaplain, come pray with her. And whereas in Mississippi, if I'm sort of suggesting, well, have you prayed about it? Or it's much more, it was a little more hidden or subtle for sure. Now I can be just open about it, have a chaplain come, and that I think this is something that you need to pray about more than it is you need a pill for. And that's very nice. And I'm able to also move on to the next patient because I do have a chaplain that I could just bring right in. But none of that is her specialty. So I'm able to help, very, very familiar with some of the brokenness and difficulty of immigrant life even better. Whereas I think in Mississippi, I had to always just focus on the medicine. And be sort of like, well, there's not a pill for that. You're gonna, but here at Hope Clinic, I'm able to really say, well, there's not a pill for that, but this is what you can do for it. And we'll get you plugged in, and the church that's helping this clinic, there's a lot more options for that. So that has been very nice. I started to say some of what Carl was saying, I guess, talk ideas, was also some of the disappointing things of my career. So I I've been in practice. I graduated med school in '06, finished residency in '09. So I'm officially 10 years of full practice on my own this year. It's certainly not without some degree of disappointment. My initial job in Dallas was actually proved to be one of the most disappointing things of my career. It was also, I guess you say that in quotations, faith-based organization, but proved extremely difficult and didn't act with integrity at all, and was supposed, and it ended very abruptly and sort of almost unbeknownst to me. So things like that do happen. I do still hold that as an experience where I learned a lot, because it was a bigger organization than what I'm looking at now, and has enabled me to understand the processes better of funding and pharmaceutical funding and process of how to get patients through that need to be got through and need to be gotten seen. So still a learning thing, but I think that the biggest thing I learned from that bad experience is where to put my self-worth. So I think that becoming a doctor is such this big deal, right? It's 11 years of training after high school. A minimum to do family medicine is that. My husband trains, I mean, we can't even talk about that. It's been training for almost 30 years in medicine. So it's this sense of like always needing to accomplish. So it ends up that I was putting a big chunk of my own self-worth in that, and then it got pretty abruptly taken away from me. And I had to sort of relearn, no, my worth is based in being a child of God. And so also in that regard, that was a good experience, a negative but good experience. Because I think that's something we have to obviously keep in mind. And then I'm able to pull that into my nursing home patients or my immigrant patients, because I think almost a nursing home patient especially that's there with dementia, somewhat abandoned by their family, they have very little, they have a lot of struggle and feel they have very little self-worth left at all at the end of their life there. So to be able to come and help say your worth is still in God and being His child has been something that I had to personally learn, but then can help share. But also with immigrants and this population of people that are marginalized that I serve.
So I know that I'm sure as somebody that shares your faith openly with their network, that you face some sort of like pushback from that sort of like certain cases. What and like how do you deal with that scenario where you may face somebody that doesn't necessarily agree with what you say faith-wise, but really what you have to say, and how you combat it?
I don't combat it. I was telling with the class that we went to the day with Dr. Ritters, and I certainly certain people can and have giftedness in that. I feel like my role is to share the love of God and not to get into debates or try and convert people. That there are people called to that, but I don't feel like that is my role and calling. And I do take my role as their doctor. Still, that is the reason that they have brought themselves to that clinic. So I need to make sure that I am addressing their blood pressure and their diabetes and their recent heart attack or what have you first. It will be when immigrants just sort of keep a pretty high level of stress, especially undocumented ones that I am seeing primarily. I would say most of my patients are undocumented immigrants. So just being undocumented and in the U.S. is a very stressful, anxiety-provoking thing. So when I'm pretty sure, kind of like the Iraqi woman I shared today, when I'm pretty sure that their symptoms are not physical, is when I will get in more to the prayer and the walking and things like that. That patient, the Iraqi patient, I did give her medicine. I think I said that, but I give it with the prerequisite that this is not a magic pill, and I'm not going to be able to give you a magic pill for what has gone on in your life. But I use it as a door to that burden in. So I have found that immigrants are pretty open to that discussion, to be honest, and that a lot of times they have insight that maybe their symptoms are not entirely physical anyway. So we'll sometimes almost welcome me saying to pray about it. Yeah. And if they don't, then I say, that's fine. You don't have to talk to the chaplain. I'm going to give you this. We'll try it and have you come back.
So Lynn, one of the things I'd like to hear you talk about, obviously at Houghton you got an academic experience that enabled you to go on and get a medical degree and that kind of thing. But both in hearing you this morning and tonight, it's also clear that there are a lot of other aspects about the challenges of your life right now besides being a doctor. So as you think back to your Houghton education, and this is a two-part question, what are the things besides studying biology that were part of your Houghton education that have prepared you for what you've been dealing with in your life? And then are there parts of your Houghton education that you, looking back, wish you'd given more attention to, that would have maybe better prepared you for, that you thought were irrelevant at the time, but you wish you'd given more direction to? So in a way, I'm inviting you to give advice to our students, but
Sure.
on both fronts.
Sure. Well, I think that, it's very laid on you that your role is to be a scholar student and a scholar servant, I'm sorry. And that has always stuck with me. I mean, I had my hand towel that you got at graduation back then. I don't know if we're still doing it. But about illustrating washing someone's feet. But truly, you've done all this hard work, this studious work, but it is to go out and serve them. It's the opposite of what many colleges focus on. So I think that was very ingrained in me and has stuck with me as one of the biggest factors in my career and my life as a mom, is that scholar servant and knowing Jesus was God, but he was a servant instead. And that is very ingrained in me here at Houghton. I think that I was extremely focused and driven with my studies, which is not a bad thing, right? But I think I could have probably started being a little more outward looking while I was here, and that was probably an area where I think back, and I was pretty much always up on this hill, except for when I was traveling for soccer. And I think I could have started looking out more, looking into Allegheny County, or looking where I could have been serving a bit while here. I really studied and played soccer. And I think it would have been neat to have been focused on something a little more outreach related while I was here.
So, obviously you're serving a lot of people where you are in Texas, but do you have any desire to go back overseas and go back to Africa or somewhere else?
Yeah, yes, I do. Hoping that French will come back. No, I do, and my husband and I do talk about that. I think he's Guatemalan, so we look for that area, and is in a specialty neurosurgery that Guatemala doesn't significantly have. So we see ourselves maybe that Central American area. His med school was also in Guatemala, so he definitely has medical ties there. But then I still have a lot of friends that are overseas in Republic of Congo and Democratic Republic of Congo. I still do feel as though I have a heart for West Africa, Central Africa too, and I'm very connected with them. So, I mean, I talk with Dr. Hardy, where I have him keep asking, regularly, and also the main physician that is not with Samaritan's Purse anymore, but that was with Samaritan's Purse, who He's a surgeon in Democratic Republic of Congo. And support them both monetarily and have close ties. I mean, almost yearly, for sure. Talk with them. So I don't feel like I've severed that. No. And do still, yes, have a heart for that. I think that it will be waiting and seeing when that comes. I do think it will still come.
So how do you put more positive mindset? Just say one day goes around and the bar goes off.
Yeah, that's a tough question because I probably am guilty of not always keeping a positive mindset. But I think that, I think, my immediate answer is that I don't want to be too negative around the kids, so I try to be as positive as I can for them, even when I'm not feeling like being there. In my family, my mom has moved to Dallas, actually, which has helped. But my family and my closest friends are actually still in Western New York. So I think that our soccer verse with the former coach here was Colossians 3:17, just what you're doing, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and thanks to God the Father through Him. And I think that it's acknowledging that I am needing to get up and I'm going to serve Him through my patience, or if I'm home that day, that I'm serving my kids and in my household for God still. And that's probably the main thing I do. Remembering those kind of key verses. I think it's important to memorize some, and that helps. But I'm guilty of not. Patients pick up on that, so do your kids, so I will warn them of that. And I think it's good to stay prayed and in the Word. Those are the same like Sunday school answers, but they're very true. That as you sort of feel it drifting and not in the Word and not praying, that will drift too, and I will get more negative, and I sense that at different stages in my life. And I definitely feel better and more optimistic when I'm keeping my relationship with God a priority.
You guys are going to a lot of fellow med students who also study the Bible in Judaism. The ways that you're studying the Bible shaped your study of medicine or your practice?
Is Dr. Page still here? Yes. Karen's Page? Okay. So, yes, I came in honestly pre-med and then picked up Bible. Like, I needed that while I was here. That it was, I needed a balance, and I felt like Bible provided that balance. And I remember when I graduated, Dr. Page was like, "So what you going to do with Bible? You're going to med school?" And I was like, I'm gonna use it, Dr. Page, I promise. But yes, I think it still provides that balance. So we talked about the Devotional Connection, the app. That app is actually my husband's vision. You have to commute so much in Dallas. Everything is so much driving. That family devotional time that we wanted to have just didn't feel like time. And then you would spend an hour commuting. So my husband was like, there needs to be a way we can do devotionals together, but in the car. And he dreamed this up. I joke with him that he's Guatemalan, so he still has this American dream, like, you dream it, you can do it. And so he created his own app. I mean, I would have never gone down that just to be able to have devotions with your kids and your wife driving to work. So I'm saying all that because yes, he envisioned it and he helped, fund some of the R&D behind the app, but it's my writing that he translates into Spanish then. So that is a big part of where I am using my Bible major, and I've had fun breaking out my books and things more. So that's been a real particular place where I'm using it, and I've, been able to also meet with pastors and use it there. And it helps because pastors can be skeptical too, not just doctors. So I think their initial thing is, well, what qualifies you to do this? You're a doctor. I'm not going to practice medicine, so why are you kind of doing talks, devotionals? And I at least can say I do have a Bible degree and at a reputable school. You don't know it maybe in Texas, but yes, and that also the degree part of it, a major part of it, helps for sure. But then being able to do proper exegesis of a passage is a big deal. It hurts, to not have that. So yes, it's been the last 2 years. I'm using it more actually. Using some. You have a question now? Yeah.
Were you in Africa anywhere other than
Congo, other than Congo? Yeah, I went to Sudan. My girls get on me because they say they didn't know all these things that I talked about in chapel today. Yes. And I went to Gabon when I was at home, actually, with another, which was also in West Africa. You can let Dr. Page know I was violent preacher.
One last question, anyone? All right, so as I mentioned, Dr. Orozco is going to be down in the Mosaic Center at 7, so we have quite a bit of time actually ahead of that. She will make herself available, stick around, answer questions, love to meet, greet her, and that would be great. Love having you here. This is a token just to say thank you for participating in this capacity, and we wish nothing but blessings on you.